Native American Voices with Louie Cook and Ray Fadden is brought to you by the Akwesasne Gahwajile Genealogy and Historical Society with funding provided by Onaway and Plenty International. We invite you to listen to the complete series online at www.gahwajile.org. Nyawa Jizawada Hunsade.
Seego, Skanagoako. Greetings, we hope that things are well with you. I'm Louie Cook. Welcome to this program about the native peoples of the Americas. Mohawk elder Dianatolo, Ray Fadden, is the founder and director of the Six Nations Museum in Onaway, New York. He and his wife Christine have operated the museum since Ray retired from a career of teaching in the public schools. At the museum, he lectures on the culture, history, and philosophy of the native peoples. You are invited to stay with us to hear Ray Fadden on Native American Voices.
Over across the ocean, there's a race of people. Those people, especially the Irish, they believe there's a little race of people, but maybe they're a foot and a half tall. And they call those little people leprechauns. Now, whether or not they existed, I don't know, but many old people think that they were little people called leprechauns. They had great power. Be careful how you treat them. You treat them wrong, they can bring you bad luck. You treat them right, they can bring you good luck. The old Indians also had a belief in little people. They call them chicao. There's three different kinds. One lives in the mountains. Watch out for him. He doesn't like human beings. Maybe you're at the foot of a cliff, all of a sudden down will come a big rock, just miss your head. You look quick. There's a little man ducks his head back. Get out of his territory. He's warning you. You stay there and you're going to have bad luck. Now that chicao is a little bit dangerous. There's another kind lives near the rivers, near the lakes, the streams. Takes care of the fish people, takes care of the frog people, takes care of the pollywogs, takes care of the lily pads. That kind's not so bad. He has nothing against humans. There's another one lives in the forest. They paint the flowers. They help the strawberries and blueberries, raspberries, huckleberries get right. They take care of the forest people. That kind of a chicao is not dangerous. They say sometimes in the forest you'll see a big tree. Around the trunk of that tree maybe there's a space a foot and a half or 2 feet away from the tree, all around, all bare. You're lucky. You found one of their places where they have their councils, where they dance at night. They say if you leave an offering of tobacco there, they bring you good luck, because they like to smoke tobacco, same as Indian people. Now those chicao made a rule a long time ago, and I'm breaking that rule right now by telling you this story in the summertime. They say these kind of stories are only to be told in the winter time, that Mother Earth is asleep, and there was a reason for that. Animals are very psychic. Maybe you didn't know, but animals and birds and insects can understand you. They can read your mind. Maybe an old man's telling a story. Maybe the bumblebee's busy getting food for her little ones. Maybe that bumblebee flies over the bark house. There's an opening there where the smoke comes out. In summertime, no smoke, so he listens. He sees that old man telling the story. He's curious how the story ends. He hangs around for half an hour. Meanwhile, those little kids are home yelling for food. That bumblebee's not doing his duty. The chicao made a rule. Don't tell stories in the summer because creatures can hear you and they neglect their work. The chicao said that is not right. These kind of stories are not to be told in the summertime. So they passed that law. Now I have my own theory as to how come that law was passed. You want to remember that in ancient days there was no radios, there was no TV, there was no moving pictures, so what did the children do besides playing games outside? They liked to hear stories. Every old person, every old man, every old woman in those ancient days had 1,000 stories in their head. And whenever an old man or an old lady walked by a bark house where there's children, what's the thing would happen? Those children would say, Grandfather, Grandfather, Grandmother, Grandmother, come on in, tell us the story, tell us the story. And being a grandfather myself, I have a suspicion that some old grandfather got fed up on telling stories and passed that rule, that these stories aren't to be told in the summertime, only in the wintertime. It's my own theory. I could be wrong, but being a grandfather, I kind of wonder. He gets sick of telling stories sometimes. Many winters ago, long ago, there was an Indian village. That village was located in the bend of a river. One day a hunter was looking for game. Maybe he'd kill a squirrel or chipmunk for breakfast, maybe a rabbit, maybe if he's lucky he'd get a deer. He's looking for game, and he came upon the tracks of a huge bear. Now I don't know, you probably don't know what a bear track looks like. If you live here you would know, because I take care of bears. I feed them behind my house. You see a little track like that, it's a cub. You see one about that big, probably the mother bear. You see one that big, it's probably the old man bear. But do you know how big this track was? This track was as big as this whole room. In fact, that bear was so big, because he weighed so much, that track sunk down in the ground about 4 or 5 feet. And that Indian couldn't figure what it was. It's funny, he said it wasn't here yesterday. He didn't know what it was. He walked around and it had 5 places where the fingers went. And he still couldn't figure what it was. He went back on the hill and he looked and his hair stood up. That's a bear track. And with a track that big, you can imagine how big that bear was. Well, he didn't know what to think. He followed that track. And it was easy to follow that trail because that bear, being so huge, he broke down those trees like they're blades of grass. It was as if a bulldozer went through the forest. Easy to follow, like a new road. He followed that trail, and those tracks circled the village and disappeared in the forest. He went back and told his people. His people began to notice a change. The deer began to disappear, both the buck and the doe. Hunters hunt all day long, find only maybe 1 or 2 deer tracks. Very unusual. You go through a beaver dam, the whole dam ripped right out, like some great animal had just ripped his claw, ripped the dam right out. There's in there, a few splinters of hair, the bones, beaver hair, some spots of blood. They know the great bear is destroying the beaver. Same way with the muskrat house. You know how a muskrat makes a house? The whole roof ripped out. Look inside, few muskrat hairs. The fish begin to disappear from the stream. They know what's happening. Onaway Goa is destroying all the game, and being so huge, he would probably could sit down and eat 2 or 3 deer at one sitting. Being so large, he needs to have plenty of food. The headman said, we must destroy Onaway Goa, because it's either him or we. What's going to happen when there's no more game? He's going to come into the village and eat us, or else we're going to die of starvation. It's either him or we. Let's get him. So the warriors were organized. They got their war clubs, they got their spears, they got their bows and arrows. It was easy to follow that bear trail. And after a while they looked and they saw the bear, and he was a giant. He towered above the trees. In fact, they were so frightened they almost ran away. And their headman, we run away? How are we going to explain this to our women and children? They think we're cowards. Let's try. So they shot their arrows, and their arrows were many. And that bear wasn't afraid, but those arrows went in. Well, you know, you stick your finger with a pin, it doesn't feel very good. It hurts. You can imagine how that bear feels. His hide's over 1.5 feet thick, and those arrows go in there, and he feels pain. He looks almost like a porcupine with so many arrows sticking in him. And he becomes very angry, and he turned and charged those hunters. He killed every one of them except 2. 2 managed to get away. They went to the council. They told their people, all of our brothers are dead. The great bear killed every one of them. Many war parties were organized against Onaway Goa. Many were killed. And meanwhile, you see no deer, no beaver. Hunters hunt all day long in the woods, get 2 or 3 squirrels, not enough to feed a family. You don't see any meat rack hanging there, and any meat on the meat rack. Those ribs are showing even more. Some because if you don't eat, what happens? You get sick. You lie in the bunk, they're sick. And after a while, if you don't eat, what happens? Death comes. Now there's only a handful of people left. And the only thing that protects them is that fire. For some reason, the bear does not like that fire. For some reason, the bear does not like the smell of smoke. They can hear that bear circle the village. Crunch, 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 crunch around the village and disappeared in the forest. Next night, they hear it again. Little closer. Crunch, crunch, crunch. That bear is getting hungrier. Sooner or later, fire or smoke will make no difference. He'll come into that village and destroy the people. And then at night, they hear his cough. Now, maybe you don't know what a bear sounds like. Let me give you a little bit of information about the bear. If you're ever in the woods and you hear this noise, turn around and go the other way. That's the mother bear warning her cubs that you are around and you are an enemy as far as she's concerned. So when you hear that noise, go the other way. Because if you go near where those cubs are, she's going to defend her little ones like your mother would defend you. Sometimes from my house I hear this noise, very soft. friendship call. That's a mother bear or father bear trying to tell me that he's there, he wants something to eat. And when I hear that noise, I answer it the same way. Then the mother bear comes out, or the father bear, whichever it is. Then they have a greeting. They bow to you. And when they bow to you, you bow back. And that means friendship. And then the bear comes right up close and I show food to him. Don't feed a bear with your hands. He doesn't mean to hurt you, but he's strong. He's not like a raccoon. Okay to feed the raccoon. He can pick it out with his fingers. Bear can't do that. He's got to knock it out. If he reaches too far and hits your hand, it's going to come off. He doesn't mean to hurt you, but it's best to throw the food at him. Don't feed him by hand. Sometimes you take it, but sometimes he might reach too far. Now sometimes in the woods I look back. There's a rock where I put food. I see a bear eating there, big bear, maybe 500 pounds. All of a sudden from the woods I hear this noise. That's another bear trying to bluff the big bear, trying to make him leave. And what he usually does, he just grabs onto that rock. He's sort of a pig. He wants to eat it all. But sometimes the bear gets fooled. One time I was watching a big bear back on the rock. He must have weighed at least 400 pounds. He's busy eating. From the woods I heard that noise. That big bear's ears lay back. He took off, and who do you suppose came out of the woods? Little cub. He bluffed the big bear. He got food. Now sometimes in the woods you hear a noise like this. That is a bear trying to warn another bear to keep his distance. But when this bear gave his cough, it sounded like thunder. The trees shook, the leaves rattled. They could hear that bear cough in the forest, his big bark. And the people crept close to the fire. They're getting nervous. They know that he's trying to get up enough courage to come into the village. They thought, this is the end. It won't be long. That bear's going to come in. That's the end of it. 3 brothers, on 3 different nights, they had a vision. They dreamt they followed Onaway Goa. They dreamt they killed him. Now, when the thing happens 3 times, that means it's 2. Straight-tongued brothers said, hey, there's 3 of us. And we had the same vision 3 different nights that we destroyed the bear. Maybe we have some kind of power we didn't know we have. Maybe we can save our people. Let's get ready. They followed that bear trail, and it was easy to follow. When they saw the bear, this time the bear didn't charge him. His ears lay back and his tail went between his legs and he took off. That bear knows that 3 hunters have some kind of power, that they can defeat him. He knows it. For many moons they followed the great bear over our Mother Earth. Now the earth rests on the back of a giant turtle. You remember 2-3 years ago down in Guatemala, the earth shook? Remember? Houses came down. What the white men call that? Earthquake. When that happens, the old Indians say, turtle is stretching himself. Remember sometimes there's a big storm in the ocean, the waves come up and crawl over the land, pull back houses and cars and people back into the ocean. They call that hurricane. The old Indian said, turtle is restless. So, they followed that great bear for many moons across our Mother Earth, right over the Adirondack Mountains, right over the Allegheny Plateau, right over the Appalachian Mountains, right over the prairie region. They came to a big river, Mississippi River. They said, we catch him there. How's he going to get across the river? But that bear looked back. He jumped right over the river like it was nothing. They said, if he can do it, we can do it. To their surprise, they tried it. They jumped right over the river right after him. Right over the Great Plains, right over the Rocky Mountains, right over the desert regions. They said, we got him. There's a high range of mountains, and beyond that's the sea, the ocean. How is he going to get across? That's when we'll catch up to him. The strange thing is, they saw him ahead on the highest mountain. He looked back, he jumped into the sky, he followed an invisible trail right through the sky. They said, if he can do it, we can do it. And to their surprise, they found that trail and they followed that bear right through the sky. Now, I don't know whether you ever have a pet dog, but if you ever notice a dog before he goes to sleep at night, he turns around and round and round and round, and then he flops down and goes to sleep. The same way with a bear. He doesn't just go into his den and fall right down and go to sleep. He circles around and round, scratches a little bit with his feet, and finally goes to sleep. Now that Big Dipper, last month that Big Dipper was high, almost over your head. A month, 2 weeks later, it's a little bit lower. 2 weeks later, it's a little bit lower. Right now in the sky, it's quite low against the sky. It's getting lower. Why? because that big bear is circling around as the earth turns. He's circling around. That circle is getting smaller and smaller because he's getting ready to hibernate, sleep for the winter. Even though he's bigger than most bears, he has to go sleep through the winter, same as our bears that run around here. They caught up to that bear when that circle got low. In the moon of falling leaves, they chased that bear. And in the moon of falling leaves, that bear is beginning to get kind of sleepy. He's getting ready to hibernate for the winter. And this time, when they shoot those arrows penetrate inside, beyond that hide, and inside they go, and what comes out of a wound? Blood and grease from the bear's wound. But of course, that wound hurts, and he's sort of a spear. You can't kill him. So he wakes up, and then he starts to run again, and he runs all year long through the sky, and every fall, when that circle gets lower and lower, when he gets ready to sleep for the winter, they shoot their arrows, and they wound him. The blood comes out, covers the trees on Mother Earth, and he continues his run again. Now, when you see the Big Dipper, it looks like this. Those 4 stars in the Dipper part, that's the Great Bear running. You know how he runs, like this. And those 3 in the handle are the 3 hunters that chase the Great Bear year after year after year through the heavens. In the moon of falling leaves, you take a look, and you see all the leaves of the trees and the bushes are turning red and yellow and orange, and that's from the blood of the Great Bear.
You've been listening to Native American Voices, which is produced in the studios of North Country Public Radio, WSLU-FM, at the St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York. Our series of talks and stories from the Six Nations Museum was produced with a grant from the New York Council for the Humanities. Recordings were done at the Six Nations Museum in Onaway, New York, by WSLU engineer Joshua Sacco. The song Color Nature Gone was written and performed by the American Indian rock group Exit and appears on their album Silent Warrior. The associate producer of this series is Peggy Berryhill. I'm Louie Cook, your host and producer, inviting you to join us again next time. Until then, I say, Skano, peace.
Let their voices sing, let their voices ring. Let my people dance. Let my people sing, let their voices ring. Let my people dance.
Native American Voices with Louie Cook and Ray Fadden is brought to you by the Akwesasne Genealogy and Historical Society with funding provided by Onaway and Plenty International. We invite you to listen to the complete series online at www.gahwajile.org. Nyawo jizawadahusade.